The obvious problem is that Will can't do that with the kind of assessment he can do out here. You need an MRI. And so, Randen, for those reasons, out of just being very cautious about your health, we are pulling you from the game.
Randen, it is so great to talk to you, but such a bummer to see you go so soon and in the way that you did. Before we get into it, how are you feeling and how is your health?
Good question. I am feeling great. I've had quite a while time to heal. I did therapy. It was a very humbling experience, I would say, very scary, a flood of emotions, competitive, and you want to stay in the game. But health wise, I'm in a good space. Thank you for asking.
That is so good to hear. Now, you said a flood of emotions. What were the different layers of emotions going on? I have to imagine that was a tough moment when Jeff says you have to be pulled from the game.
Yeah, I mean, they were gonna have to drag me out because I was willing to do a challenge swimming in a circle if I had with one good arm. I mean, it was like really, I just did not want to quit. It was hard, I didn't feel like I knew something was serious was happening. So I have accepted at that point. I have to be rational. I can't jeopardize I can't jeopardize my health, so it was hard for me to accept. It was hard for me to understand why sleeping, why the swelling on my back was pressing against, how that happened. And it's just a series of events that you just cannot predict. You can train for many things in Survivor, but you cannot train for that. So it was hard for me to accept. I'm not gonna lie. It's a moment that really humbled me mentally and physically.
Ever since you woke up with that pinched nerve, were you worried that this could be the end result? At what point did you realize this might be really happening?
Well, the night before the storm, I had pretty severe headaches, and I felt like a lightning. Like I felt very confused. Like I didn't know where I was, but I was trying to sleep, and I understood that I was being monitored. So I'm like trying to hold myself together, like Randy, don't show weakness, don't show weakness. But when I got up and I had this massive migraine and I couldn't move my head like this. If you notice, and when you see it, I'm not moving my head because I'm in pain, but I'm not trying to show my tribe that. And then once I couldn't, had no feeling in my arm, I knew in my head that there was no possible way that they were going to allow me to continue like this.
The last time we see you, they're taking you away. You have an MRI scheduled for the next morning. So, how did that go? And what has your recovery been like since?
That was a nightmare for me mentally because I'm like, oh my God, like I'm having an emergency MRI. They immediately rush me to this hospital. They tell me that a helicopter's on standby to Australia for emergency surgery if the pressure is if the swelling is pressing against the disc rather. And it was scary because I'm like, oh my God, I could be paralyzed. Like who wants to have back surgery? I mean, the spine is something that you cannot fix for the most part, right? It takes, so I was mortified, but I can tell you, even up until that point, I was still like, I would have made the merge. I was like, I was really kind of confused. I was very, very confused. And I say this a lot in my head that it was up until the point where I got into the MRI and I was inside the tube. It was like an inside MRI where I started to reflect on myself and I'm like, okay, the game needs to step aside now. Like I might, this might be something serious. And it hit me when they told me, if you get on the helicopter, we're gonna call your wife. And I'm like, oh snap! It clicked me out of the game immediately. I was like, okay, this is serious. Thank God, because there were like a couple of neurologists on a Zoom call or some kind of, and they were all chiming in, and I was hearing that as I was getting the MRI done. It was kind of scary.
What ended up being the result of the MRI?
Oh, yeah. So the test came out that the swelling was not touching the disc to where the point where it was going to be affected. And then my arm just had it just needed a lot of time because of the pinched nerve on the bottom. So it was a double whammy. And essentially what they did was that they put me in therapy. They gave me anti-inflammatories and they felt like the anti-inflammatories would work really quickly to stop the swelling for that hump on my back. And it worked. I mean, it took me days and days to heal up, and then it took me months to get my arm fully back. You'll see in the exit, you see me wave, but I had no arm strength, no hand strength. So that took me months, and I was working with my personal doctor, and we were able to get that, finally back up to where I'm normal and comparable on both hands.
As we're seeing you go, Venus says, "Oh no, he's leaving with an advantage in his pocket." And I think just the fandom collectively was like, "Oh, I wish he had a chance to give it to her, give it to someone, or do something." Did that go through your mind at the time? Would you have had a chance to, and would you have wanted to?
Yes. So I was going to give my advantage, my beware advantage to Venus, 100%. I felt like, I go for the underdogs in the game. I respected her game. She had mentioned why she was playing the game. I thought it was incredibly impactful. And I felt like my other tribe mates had no threats. I mean, they were not under any circumstances to be voted out, in my opinion. And I thought, so I was like, I'm going to give it to the underdog. And we, and I was struggling to give it to her because this has never been done before, actually, where you give somebody a beware advantage. I had to ask, I was asking, I was like, I need to give it. But the problem was I didn't know how to, I thought I had to physically give it to her in my hand, because she couldn't get it herself. So throughout that whole time, I am like trying to get to my blazer to get it out. But I just couldn't get there. I would say I couldn't get there, but I had full intentions of giving it to her because I felt like she deserved it up in that point based on how her game was as compared to my tribe mates.
In terms of how the rules go, did you have to give it to her with your hand, or could she like have snuck it out of your pocket? What did you find out?
So I found out that I did have to give it to her, but I could have given it to her up until the point where I get evac'd, and I did not know that. I had nobody. I was never briefed. I mean, this is kind of uncharted territory, but
Right.
wanted to do is go to my blazer, get it right before I see this boat. Like as soon as I saw the boat, I am trying to go there, but it just the forces of the universe. And I was going to slip it to her like kind of like a like that. I was not going to do it obviously. Like I could have done it obvious, but I didn't have it on me. I mean, it was in my blazer in camp.
Mhm.
So, but that was my full intentions at that time. I will not mince words. I was going to give it to her.
It was so interesting to watch your journey with Venus because you start out comparing her to Parvati, not sure you want to work with her. And then suddenly, like the next episode, you're telling her about your advantage. You've decided, like, I want to put my trust in one person, and this is the person I want to put my trust into. At what point did you make that realization that this is someone I want to work with, not work against?
Yeah, so in the beginning, she was playing, Venus was playing very, very aggressive. Like, I mean, I was like, hey, my name is Randen. She was like flipping a rock. I'm to looking for an advantage or an idol. I'm like, whoa, I'm like, Venus is very, very aggressive in the beginning. So I didn't really understand what that was in the beginning of the game. Everybody's trying to like hyper social, like you're like trying to understand each other, telling people details about you, like, oh, when I was 3, and I'm like, I just met you. Like, what is happening? So it had to do with her why of playing the game that kind of changed my position. She told me why she was playing the game, and I related so much to it. Couldn't really go into details about that. I really respected why she was playing the game, and I couldn't tell her that. So I was like, all right, look, that changed my whole view on you. Now I don't see you as like a super hyper aggressive player. And the Parvati Light comment was nothing superficial, by the way. That was a test for Soda. I set up a troll to test Soda because I wanted to bond with Soda first, but Soda was like selling real estate to everybody so quickly and aggressively that I couldn't really understand. I'm like, Soda, come over here. Like, so I'm like, hey, I'm going to set up something that from the only person from Canada. I know we said it, we introduced ourselves. And I was like, oh, she might be playing like a Parvati Light type game. And I said, it was like more like a gameplay thing. And then what happened? It came right back to me. And at that point, I knew I could not trust Soda with anything
Mhm.
because she would just immediately. So then I shift my focus to the other tribe mates, and I ended up with Venus because Tevin and Hunter already had a solid foundation. Liz was hovering around them. It was really hard to get to Liz at that point. She's playing Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, and I love her for that because it works. It does work because you just go with the flow. And with Venus, we're very alike with the way we're over analytical thinkers, if that makes sense. We like suss everything out too much to our disadvantage. So if I felt like it was beneficial at that point to trust her and say, hey, listen, we can make this game work. We can't make it obvious that we're working together because people think we hate each other, but it can be an advantage if we get to merge. Because then we can feed each other information from both sides because nobody will suspect me like working with you at all. So I felt like it was an advantage for both of us. It was a win-win.
Interesting. So you feed Soda this comment, and then it gets back to Venus. Did you guys kind of work that out once you aligned?
Oh yeah,
Did
that
she
so
did she call you out for that?
yeah, she came up to me and she was like, "Oh yeah, what about that Parvati Light comment?" I was like, I was like, listen, it was a troll. It had nothing to do with anything superficial. It's game. This is a game. You know what I mean? Like, so you have to understand, you told me you're from Canada. I know you're going to like one of the best goats of all time in Canada, you know? So I needed something to suss out. I don't know anything about anybody else but that. I don't have a bullet list of anything else. So she laughed it off. She took it as a compliment, which thank God, because I was, you know, I told her, you know, Parvati's a goat, but I don't think you're one-to-one with Parvati. I can't, you're way too early in the game, but it was really to suss out, and I would say to get Soda to find out if I can trust Soda. And at that point, I told her that I am not going to be aligning with Soda at all for the rest of the game because she can't pass, you know, at that point, she couldn't pass that basic test. Everybody else did, but she did not. And that's where we kind of like said, okay, you know, you take Soda off my back, and I will go to Tevin and try to have Tevin more focused on voting out Soda than you, because Tevin at that point was kind of like, you know, more concerned about Venus at that point, as you saw in one of the clips. You know, he wasn't really aligned. So I was like, I'm going to work Tevin. You work Soda, keep Soda off my back, but Soda is the target, you know, and that's kind of like where he was.
Okay, so yeah, because to see you talking in this last episode, you're talking about Hunter, you're talking about Tevin. Would you and Venus have ideally wanted to target Soda if you guys had gone to Tribal Council as a 6? Or
So
who was the top person at your 2 minds that you would have wanted to take aim at?
100%. I was, and I love Soda. She's like a sister, you know, but we're playing the game. And in the game, I was going to vote. I was trying to convince everybody to vote Soda because it does a lot of things for my gameplay. Number one, it prevents Venus from trying to set up some kind of a women's alliance when she mentioned jokingly one time. And, you know, so I was like, okay, I need to keep my numbers. I need to make sure that I'm aware socially of what's happening because nobody's never mentioned that but her. So I was like, okay, you're my friend. Like, you know, I trust you, but you're revealing things to me, but I don't know how serious you are about doing these things. So I was like, okay, so that removing Soda puts a check on that. Also, it keeps our alliance strong because now you can't go to Soda, right? You know, completely remove her out of the picture. Now we have to figure things out with other elements. And Tevin, I felt like would have, I think me and Tevin and I had an understanding that we were going to go Soda, but he didn't confirm, but he understood my point about hypersocial gameplay. And I said, Tevin, there can only be one. There can only be one. And I was like, Tevin, I think I was making good headway with Tevin. And I think Venus was doing a good job kind of working Soda's mind a little bit with that dynamic between them. Couldn't have backfired 100%, but I didn't play Survivor not to take risks. I had to take the risk. I think we would have voted Soto out.
Now, we've seen a lot of people who were medically evacuated out of the game come back in future seasons. Is that something that you're hoping for?
Ooh, wow, that, you know, I cannot say that I would say that it doesn't scare the heck out of me to play that game again. I would say that I would play it. I would have to talk to my wife would have to have the utmost sit down with me because, you know, it's a very serious thing. I can tell you one thing though, I would jump at the chance, but I would be sleeping on sand. I'm going to take the Tika method. What I saw when they were playing, they always slept on the sand. And you know, Hunter kept on telling me about that, and I just did not heed his words. But I would jump at the notion to play again because I learned from my mistakes. I would just play a very, very different game in terms of like taking care of myself, and not just like doing everything that I wanted to do physically, you know, and mentally and physically, I was exhausted. So I would jump at the chance again, but I would take care of my mental and do things not so risk, you know, averse with my body, if I were to do it again.
Is there anything you would do different strategically?
It's really hard. So I would say that in the beginning, I probably would not invoke the name of a goat who played the game before, because let me tell you, the army that followed that on social was insane. It was insane. You cannot invoke Parvati's name. And I did message Parvati and I said, hey, listen, it was a troll. I shall not. I bow down to the queen. You know, but I definitely felt like people needed to understand that I didn't have a lot of information I needed to troll. So I would say I would not invoke one of those names again because Lord have mercy, that army was serious on my tag stories. It was serious. I would say that's one thing. I would say I'd be very cautious of doing that because people may not understand the context of what I'm doing. They may take it to a place where I'm like, what are you talking about? You know, it's nothing superficial. It's a game. It's a game tactic, and it worked for me.